Let's go! Doing a video talking about every single season of the best show of all time, The Office. Too bad season 1 sucks. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Just Jake Reviews. I review albums, movies, and sports games, and TV shows apparently. Where today, in the intro, like I said... Hey everyone, editing Jacob here. While I'm going to edit the video, I want to say one thing real quick. This is the only episode in the entire 9-part series I'm doing where it's going to seem like I'm doing a review instead of actually giving my own opinions. Trust me, I don't want that. I want this entire series to be based off my fun opinions because I realize that if I'm doing a season review, it's going to be boring and you guys can just watch the show yourselves. And no one's going to watch that anyways, so I apologize. Season 1, this video is going to seem very review-based and not opinion-based, so it might be kind of boring. So just, hang in there. The other seasons will be better. All right, back to the video. I'm going to be making a video where I talk about every single season of The Office. There's 9 of them. There's going to be 9 videos in this series. I can't make these too long, but I can't make them too short. You know what I'm saying? So I got to find that good old sweet spot. Season 1... might be the shortest one because once again the season is literally 6 episodes. So yeah, I'm gonna I wrote down some thoughts I had about each season. I'm gonna talk about them, and yeah, just basically I might rant. I'm probably not gonna rant in this one because season 1's very calm, but other seasons I'm gonna rant. But yeah, season 1 of The Office. Yeah, so let's get right into it. So my thoughts on season 1 of The Office. What are my thoughts? My thoughts are it's kind of shit. Yeah, season 1's not great. And you can't really blame the writers for that. The writers and the directors, they saw the success of the UK version, the UK Office, and they were like, okay, Ricky Gervais is a genius. Stephen Merchant, who is another writer on that show, freaking genius. We love this show. And there was a lot of, things are getting pretty scary with, people finding out that they're going to do a US version of The Office. And I think John Krasinski and a few people were like, only the US can fuck this up. Because John Krasinski and a few other people were fans of the OG show. And they were like, only the Americans can mess up this masterpiece of a show. And the pilot and the entirety of season 1 kind of flopped. I think Steve Carell said that the Office pilot is one of the worst running pilots, or one of the worst test pilots, I think, of all of NBC, sorry. So, season 1, we got the manager himself, Michael Gary Scott, Michael G. Scott. Michael Scott, played by Steve Carell. It's really sad how this is your introduction to him, because season 1, he's a prick. Season 1, Michael Scott's kind of insufferable. He's kind of a prick. The writers were trying to make him too much like David Brent, who is Ricky Gervais, who is the manager in the UK office, like I said. And actually, the Office pilot is actually a almost shot-for-shot remake of the UK pilot of The Office. And then once they got into like Diversity Day and healthcare, they actually got into their own episodes. But yeah, it makes sense because the UK pilot is better than the OG pilot, or better than the US pilot. I've seen 2 episodes of the UK Office. It's not bad. I don't hate it. It's okay. In other seasons, you can make the argument of Michael is still unsufferable, but in a good way because it's funny. And yes, it is funny. While in season 2, 3, and then up until 7 when he leaves, Michael is funny. It's like a funny cringy. It's like a fun cringe or like a fun corny. Season 1's not. Season 1, he's just a flat out dick. And you can't really blame him for that. Steve Carell is an amazing freaking actor. They tried to make him like Ricky Gervais, which is not great. They shouldn't do that. And then eventually in season 2, they find Michael's, they find some rhythm, and then they make Michael the best character, and they make Michael the character that we all know as. All right, next up, you got his trusty number 2, Dwight Kurt Schrute. Dwight K. Schrute, played by Rainn Wilson, is the greatest character in the entire show. He is the best character on The Office. Amazing, great salesman, fantastic. By the way, if you're not familiar with The Office, if this is for some reason the first time you're hearing about it, The show is literally about a paper company, Dunder Mifflin Paper Company. They sell paper, and it's just a show that takes place in an office. Chaos starts, characters galore. It's awesome. Season 1 also proves that it also took a little bit of time to develop some other characters besides Michael. Like, for example, Dwight's character in season 1 is an NPC. Dwight's literally an NPC. He's a robot. I don't know why he acts like he does in season 1. Maybe because Rainn Wilson was not even new to acting, okay? Fun fact, I know he's not in like a ton of big movies or big projects, but before The Office, Rainn Wilson was in 6 Feet Under, which I think is somewhat of a big show. But yeah, that was before The Office. And some characters in some TV shows, you could tell they have those mannerisms that are like, what are you doing? Like, why do you act like that? That's kind of Dwight. He's kind of a caricature. He's kind of an NPC. I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad character. Dwight's still Dwight, and he is pretty funny at some times. But once again, once you get into more seasons, he starts to develop. You know, this is what Dwight, Dwight just starts to develop, right? Then we got the other important part of The Office. We got Pamela Beasley. Pam Beasley, the receptionist, who is I guess in the first few seasons, the Office hottie. And then you got Jim Halpert, played by John Krasinski. By the way, Pam Beasley is played by Jenna Fisher. John Krasinski, who plays Jim Halpert, who is the other salesman, who you could argue is probably also the best character in the show. John Krasinski is the most normal. Jim Halpert plays the normal, relatable guy who, while you're watching the show and you're seeing all this chaos ensue, Jim Halpert is just there to be like, what in the world? Like, what am I, like, I feel like the show is almost like his world, which is kind of cool, I guess. There's not much storyline with these characters, except for maybe Jim. All the background characters, you barely get to see them, except for maybe Kelly. Kelly, who's in customer services, I believe. Kelly. So once again, episode 2 of the show, you have Diversity Day, which is their first episode, because once again, the pilot was basically a ripoff of the UK pilot. So Diversity Day is their first episode. Very, there are some funny scenes in it. There are, Kelly slapping Michael. Try my cookie. Him being racist is pretty funny. The Chris Rock thing is pretty funny. That's a good laugh. So I guess Michael does have some parts of season 1 where it's like, oh, okay, I can dig this a little bit. As soon as you see him on screen for the first time, Jim and Pam, you immediately notice that chemistry. You're like, oh my god, the chemistry between these two characters are insane. Oh my god, these two characters better be endgame. By the way, they're acting in season 1, which they are, spoiler alert. Yeah, Jim and Pam, great friends. I wouldn't say the pilot or Diversity Day, you think of them as, like, lovers yet. You think of them as friends. Even though you have the scene of Pam sleeping on Jim's shoulder, which is pretty romantic, which is the first of many romantic parts of the show. But Jim and Pam are definitely not together because Pam is dating Roy Anderson, who works in the warehouse. You don't really get to see much of the warehouse in season 1 except for basketball. But yeah, Roy is Pam's fiance. They have been engaged for, I think, 3 years, which is, yes, kind of a running joke. It's a very, very long engagement. It is. And immediately you could tell that Roy sucks. And if you're watching season 1 and you can't tell why Roy is bad, I do kind of understand you, because there's not many signs of him being an asshole right away. But once you get into later seasons, like seasons 2 and 3, you could definitely tell that, okay, this Roy guy is not great for Pam at all. The Alliance, the worst episode of season 1 in my opinion. This is not a funny episode. This is not great. This is the first little bit you get to see of Jim pranking Dwight, besides in the pilot episode. If you have not seen the show, you might still know the infamous scene of Jim putting Dwight's stapler in Jell-O. That is the first of many pranks that Jim does on Dwight. Jim and Dwight don't really get together. They don't really get along a whole lot. Dwight and Jim are very, they're enemies at first. Jim loves pranking Dwight, which is a huge recurring segment or huge recurring joke in the entire show, spanning across all 9 seasons. You don't really call it this, but you can consider The Alliance as a whole big prank episode. on Jim, or sorry, on Dwight, Jim on Dwight. And it's also, you get to see Meredith for the first time. Meredith is in season 1. I'll get to my final thoughts on her, like, when we get to the later seasons. But yeah, it's her birthday. Once again, Michael just being a really insufferable prick during the whole birthday thing, and, Dwight going into a box because him and Jim are doing this fake alliance, because the entirety of season 1, the main recurring theme is there's downsizing, which, if you have no clue what that is, in an actual office, they do downsizing, which means they let somebody go because of cuts. And there's a character named Devin in season 1, and you don't get to know much about it. You don't get to see him a lot because it's literally just season 1. But Devin is the one that gets fired at the end of season... Actually, I think it's season 2 he gets fired. But yeah, so the entire office at the same time is freaking out about, oh, am I going to get let go? Michael has to downsize. Because in this documentary, you can tell that Michael is not taking his job seriously. You're wondering, is Michael an actual good manager because of how unserious he's taking his job? Then we got episode 5, which is the best episode of the entire season 1 for me. Basketball. Basically, The Office is playing a basketball game. It is the warehouse versus The Office. And in the warehouse, you get to see Daryl for the first time. Daryl in season 1 doesn't really say much. He doesn't say much really at all. And yeah. And also, season 1, you have Ryan, the new temp, who I forgot to say that. Yeah, Ryan, the new temp. I'm going to give my full thoughts about Ryan later on because I don't like him. But season 1, I'll give him a pass. But no, basketball's awesome. Jim balling his fucking ass off. You get to see, there's some small little heated rivalry between him and Roy. Because, Jim wants to play, Jim's very jealous of Roy because Jim does want to date and like Pam, but he can't because of Roy. And then episode 6, the final episode, we have Hot Girl, which has Katie, with Katie played by Amy Adams, who is our first big guest star, I guess you could say. Yeah, Amy Adams is pretty attractive, I would say. She is the hot girl. And at the end of the episode, you get to see Jim gets to take her home. Jim asks her out, and they start dating. So Jim and Katie are now a relationship, which is supposed to make Pam somewhat jealous because you could tell Pam is not the happiest with Roy. But Jim and Katie, I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't mind seeing more of Katie because she was very early on. But you'll find out later on that the breakup wasn't great. But yeah, season 2 is gonna be awesome. So yeah, season 1, best episode, basketball. Worst episode, The Alliance. There's not going to be much ranting because season 1 is very tame and chill. We'll get to more ranting eventually. But yeah, that will be all for today's video. This is going to be my first summary video of season 1. Other seasons will be down the line. Don't know when, but I have a schedule coming up. You're beautiful.